Hello, I'm Grace Trafton of The Better Part. You may have heard of the term digital disruption recently, but do you know what it really means and what ramifications it might have on our lives? Stay tuned and hear from an expert on this subject. Dr. Tracy Weiland is a researcher and speaker on the impact of technology on society, work, and careers. A former visiting scholar at Stanford University, she has held leadership positions at Apple, HP, and Cisco Systems. In addition, Dr. Weiland has authored 13 books. Welcome back to our program, Tracy.
Oh, thank you for having me. I so much enjoy coming on your shows.
Well, it's definitely our pleasure. You've written 2 more books since we last met, and one of your latest books is titled Digital Disruption. What exactly is digital disruption?
I know we're confused in this world today. It's all about innovation and change, and a lot of it has been driven by these very new technologies that we can't really touch and feel. We hear things like artificial intelligence or the cloud or big data, and it's really changing the status quo. And this continues to happen in history, so it's very disruptive. And so sometimes I even say it's almost now digital chaos. We have to sort of grapple with how do we live our lives, our careers, our work environment, and even education in this new world.
I think part of the issue is that it's been happening so fast.
Very fast. Very, very fast.
And what is the difference between digital disruption and a disruptive technology? Because I think there's been some confusion about that.
You know, we've always had disruptive technologies. The World Economic Forum has said that we are now in the 4th industrial revolution. The first one was the technology change from agriculture to farming, right, using machines. Then the second one was transportation, cars and railroads. Then the third big change was, right here in Silicon Valley, you have PCs and mobile devices. And now we're in the 4th industrial revolution, and it's a digital one with some of these technologies, as I said, like you can't even see them. And so technology will always be disruptive, but the types of technologies continue to change. But the good thing is humanity always copes and changes with it, so that we really shouldn't be as fearful as some people are.
Hopefully humanity can cope.
We always cope.
I think some cope better than others.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, there have been several books written recently about this subject. What is different about your book and other books on the market?
Well, one is I have each chapter as individual, so it's a standalone. And I do that for education community because they tell me now that teachers pick and choose chapters for classes and don't use entire books. I wanted to make sure I address that new change and disruption in education. 2 is there's a lot of practical advice. When I talk to executives and HR executives, human resource executives, they want to know the how-to. So I always try to bring in a how-to. And then I also bring in the component for students and employees so that they can start to plan their lives, their careers differently with some tips and pointers. So it's much more pragmatic than academic, really historic. So I try to blend it.
Is there a target audience for this book? Who is this book for?
Yeah, this is a tough one because the request for it has come from all different communities. So it's come from people in industry. It's come from people in education. It's come from individuals. And so I've tried to address a snippet for each. And then later on in future books, I dive deeper into different segments.
So you've written about 10 disruptive predictions. And what led you to these particular predictions?
Mostly was really requests from the community saying, how is society changing? What do I need to know? How's my career changing? What do I need to know? I'm a teacher. Do I have to change? Is education shifting? And so a lot of it was just what people were asking me, how do you predict the future, or what do you predict that I can do to really prepare better?
So your first prediction is disruptive society. In what way is society being disrupted?
Well, if you think about it today, there's over 8 billion devices in the world that are now like connected. There's more phones out there, these smart devices, than toothbrushes and people.
Is that right?
Yeah, in the US, they say our connectivity rate is about 3 devices or more per person. And you think about it, you have a tablet, a computer, you might have a gaming device, you certainly have different Fitbits and different gadgets. So we as a society have already become very dependent on technology. I was in New York in a Broadway show, and a gentleman stood up right before the show started, and I said, "I can't find my phone." And everybody was diving over there because everybody could feel the panic. He was so connected to his phone. A lot of people, sleep with their phones, right? They're afraid to miss a text or something. If you're using Uber or Facebook or posting selfies, let's face it, you're pretty connected and you're pretty addicted to technology, and you're changing the way that you live, but you're also putting some impetus on work environments and industry to change along with you.
It's so easy for us to get addicted, isn't it?
We are. I mean, most people, will hyperventilate if they don't have their phone with them, and I think that's one everyone can really relate to. And if you think about it, that didn't exist maybe 10 years ago. I mean, this is nuts, and yet we're very dependent on it.
Right, so quickly. So the workplace has changed dramatically in a relatively short period of time. Tell us about how work is disrupted.
Sure. So there's a couple of different areas that I see changing in work. Number one is we're in a gig economy now. So we have a lot of independent people, consultants, and freelance experts that are now blending into the workforce. It used to be the same people at work 9 to 5, but now it's really a much more robust workforce. Number two is your teammates changing. You might be teaming up with a robot, right? A robot in manufacturing, or artificial intelligence in the insurance industry or customer service, and wherever your job is. And also, it's just like we're living longer. And people have these incredible new work spans that really are 60 or 70 years. I mean, researchers say we're living to 100, and we've talked about this before, and babies born today might live to 150. So that's mind-boggling.
That is.
You're going to have many, many careers, not just jobs, careers. And so we actually have to start thinking about that differently.
Very differently, it seems.
Yes.
Now, if work is disrupted, is industry also disrupted?
So I'll name 3 industries that have disrupted before our eyes. Number one is to just think about like the taxi industry, the Ubers, right? Uber really connected supply and demand. People who had cars, who would like to drive them and make money, and people who don't have cars or don't want to have cars and are willing to pay money for a ride. And it's now Uber is one of the largest transportation firms in the world overnight. Who ever heard of it? The second one is really the hospitality industry. Airbnb. People have rooms to let, and people want to stay in other people's homes, right? It's more efficient maybe than staying in a hotel or an inn. Or if you think about it like a big event, like a Super Bowl, there isn't a capacity for people. And so Airbnb is one of the largest hospitality industries, and they don't even own a room. And, Uber doesn't even own a car yet.
Right.
And the third one is retail. So Amazon is always in the news. Amazon is like one of the largest retailers in the world. At some point, it didn't even have a storefront, and now they're actually developing the storefronts. So here are 3 industries that were transformed overnight, really by connecting supply and demand, using devices, using apps, and that's unheard of. We just haven't experienced anything like this than that has happened.
I think it's kind of ironic that Amazon is now opening up storefronts.
Exactly. There's a lot of news now that Walmart is going to try to use their storefront positioning, right, because they have so many stores close to people, as warehousing. So they're coming at Amazon in different directions. They'll use it as warehouses, they'll use it as the pickup depots, and then go online as well. So it's very competitive out there.
And Tesla, I hear, is trying to close up all their dealerships.
Right. So it varies, right? Every industry, it just makes you realize how competitive it is. Your competition could be someone you completely just don't expect that's eating your lunch. So everyone has to be a little more diligent and on top of innovation.
Are there Any other industries that you can think of that's been changing?
Well, I think the one that everyone is starting to hear a lot more about and can see, particularly here in Silicon Valley, is autonomous cars. And if you think about it, it's really using artificial intelligence, sensors, robotics, right? And you have driverless cars. It's just incredible. And now this is becoming a new platform, a new industry, and really a new ecosystem that was going to really open up a lot of different kinds of jobs. And people have to cope with it, right? How do we make roads to accommodate these autonomous
Right,
cars?
right.
How do we develop insurance? What does the police do? Can they speed? No, they're already, programmed. So it's we need people to design the cars. We need people to repair these cars. So you can just see right now the budding of a new industry and a whole ecosystem around it. It's pretty exciting if you think about it.
It is exciting and it sounds very challenging. How are the industries developing these new requirements? Do you have a good sense of how they're doing?
So I look at these landscapes, right? They say all of the innovation on charts, like where is it coming from? There's a lot of startups. That's why Silicon Valley is, so incredible, because you see people who are just focused on the sensors to put in the cars. Some people are just focused on the headlights. Some people are just focused on, the robotic pieces of it. So or the safety piece of it. So it's quite interesting to see that how innovation really builds off of innovation. But now you have so many partnerships. The automotive industry partners with the software industry, the partners with the hardware industry, and now you have new platforms developing.
Now, if work and industry is disrupted, do we also need disruptive leaders?
You do. When you think about to try to drive innovation and lead these new kinds of firms that have part technology, part gig economy, part people, you need people who are always going to keep on the cusp of the edge. People who are have interconnected knowingness, who can really look at the landscape, look at the competition, look at the players that you may not expect. I always say, well, what would happen if Amazon actually decided to get into your industry? Oh, they're not in my industry. Oh, they could be very soon, and they might be. So you have to be much more aware and keep up on the competition more than in the past.
Now, you've written about women in leadership roles in the past. Do you think that women are disruptive leaders?
I do. I think, women historically have always been quoted that they are great multitaskers. They can do so many things at the same time. They're actually very quick adopters of some of the newer technology, particularly social media. A lot of women innovators and entrepreneurs today, in different industries like beauty and media. And so women just really seem to be much more flexible and have a keen understanding of people and the direction to go. And this is what women tell me, and not something I'm defining, but women saying that I can actually understand the humanity part of leadership as well as the concrete parts as well.
But women still has a very long ways to go, don't they?
Yes, me too. A lot of us have a long way to go, but I'm very energized by a lot of the movements and the activity that's been happening, really around diversity here in California. Even boards now have mandates to really increase the diversity on the boards. So I think a lot of the change is starting to happen. I wish it just would happen faster.
Right. It's been very, very slow going, I think.
And we've paved the way. We're the women who've paved the way for the next generation of women.
I hope so. Now, our workforce also has become more and more diversified. What's the significance of this in relationship to disruption?
I think it's very good, because if you think about innovation is all around having collective wisdom. A lot of companies go out and crowdsource ideas from people all over the world because they need to innovate. So they're realizing that we have to sort of crowdsource internally as well in our own companies. So that means we need to have a much more diverse organization. It could be including people globally, could be including people of all different gender, color, religions, and backgrounds, because we realize that our customer base is very diverse and we need to really service that diverse workforce and customer base.
Is there something different that people should do about their careers today than they did in the past?
Yes, I think people have to disrupt themselves, number one. And number two, you really have to be the CEO of your own job now. You really have to take control of that career. And that's hard for many people, because it used to be that you went to work and your manager would be all-knowing and your manager would tell you what to do. And in exchange, you would get promoted, and the manager would have a hierarchy and they would get promoted. Today, companies are saying, oh my God, we have to innovate on the fly. So each one of you need to start thinking about expanding your role. I mean, when I had a new employee come in, I would sit them down and say, you know, this job you have today, it's not going to look like anything like this a year from now because of you. You're going to become the CEO of this job, and you're going to keep up on the marketplace, the competition, and the future so that a year from now, the job will evolve into where it needs to be because of your insight, because of your foresight, because of your skills.
How many managers, though, in reality have that kind of outlook?
Well, I think it's changing at work, and a lot of companies today are doing a lot more focus than they have in the past on reskilling people, training, and really focusing on developing their managers, their leaders, and their employees. And this is a shift from the past, so there's a lot more focus and funding going right into that.
Now, in view of the rapid pace of change, are there new skills that people should be thinking about?
Yeah, there's many new skills, so I can just mention a few. One is think about multimedia literacy, right? 18 to 34-year-olds would rather watch a YouTube video than read a book. So you think about it in the workforce today, a lot of us are just visual learners. 85% of us would prefer to be visual than text-based. And so how do we change maybe our training materials? How do we change our advertising? How do we change internal communication? So I think that's just one example. Two is we're a data world. There's trillions of data being generated from all our devices. And so we have to sort of make sense of the data. That's a new skill. How do I aggregate data to be able to understand the customer base? I have a story that I went into Nordstrom and they had collected all the data using my receipts. And they told me that they actually knew the designers I wear, what departments I shopped in, and they thought they knew my favorite salesperson because they had collected all the data over the years off the receipts.
Now, do you think some people might feel that that's a little bit of an invasion on their privacy?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are very concerned about how much data is really being collected that they don't even know about. And a lot of our younger generations are very freely give data through Facebook and a lot of social media profiles. And so this is in the news quite a bit, is how do we actually protect ourselves? You know, what are new security measures that we need to take? Are these social media companies being more transparent and honest about what they're doing with the data that we're, providing to them? And so it is a big deal. It's in the news quite a bit.
Now, I've been concerned for a long time that our educational institutions haven't been keeping up with the changes that you've been describing. What changes do you think are necessary for our educational systems to keep up with this new society of ours?
You know, and I myself have been an educator, and my philosophy has always been that you have to keep up by developing the products, the students, that can deliver innovation and work in the environment that they're going to live in. So we can't keep educating students or, for the past. We have to look at the present and the future. So I see some of the solutions as a lot more connectivity between industry and education. What are the jobs of the future? How can I give some window into what a job might be for a student? In fact, I was reading about Oracle had opened up a high school on their campus here in Silicon Valley because they said, I've got to bring students in to have them understand what the world is, and the best way I can do that is by bringing education here. Now, a lot of other industries are partnering with education. Toyota was telling me that they actually give a lot of schools robotics so that they understand how to use them, work with them, so that they are prepared for robotics in different industries. And so I think partnerships is one of the ways that we have to do it. Teachers have to innovate themselves, really understand how do I really resonate with students today and use some of the technology so I can help them how to really, develop their own careers and curriculum.
But it still seems that there isn't enough of this being done, the partnership between industry and the educational system, and also the schools themselves. It seems that often they're still teaching students how to work in yesterdays.
I
world.
know, and it is so hard, and it does move slow. It's one of the slowest industries, and then government's pretty slow too. That we need to really think about. You know, a lot of them say, well, it's funding, or a lot of the younger people don't want to go and teach, right? So we need to bring in some of our younger students, right? You know, to teach. Also, industry people. You know, when I worked in companies, I would always teach night school because I wanted to prepare students to understand what it was like day to day. So we do need a lot more of this, and it has been very slow going.
Now, you've talked about career selfies in the past. So is this the time for another career selfie? But first of all, remind us, what exactly does that mean, a career selfie?
Yeah, so a career selfie is really taking a snapshot of where you are in your career at any point and putting focus on it. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I have to create a whole business plan around my career. No, you can just take a snapshot. So let's say you are an individual contributor in your job and you really want to be a manager. Okay, so let's just take a snapshot. Sit down and talk with your manager or your human resource and find out, what does it take? What do we need to do? What are the skills? How do I get trained? You know, how do I make a plan for myself? So if a year from today, I can actually see myself in that role and make the steps to get there. And you can do it with, maybe I'm a business owner and I want to develop a stronger brand. You know, so how do I just focus on that? Do I need to have a website, social media platforms? What do I need to do differently to really position myself? So a career selfie can happen at any time, and it can be very simple day-to-day planning. So let me just give you some more examples, right? Because I have young people all the time who are starting off in the workforce, and they say, what is some advice that you would give to me? So I said, okay, number one, you know, you're at the beginning of the runway of very long careers. We talked about you're going to be living a lot longer,
Right.
long career path. So one is get as much experience as you can. Right? That's your job at this point. This is the snapshot I want you to look at. Number two is you want to stay up on the technology in your job. So just learn too, right? So if you're in manufacturing, maybe it's robotics and 3D printing, or maybe you're in the media and it's social media and video streaming. Think about two technologies that make a lot of sense that you're interested in that helps you in your job. Number three is really try to understand the firm and opportunities the firms can offer you. So ask about rotational moves. You know, okay, I've learned this job and I realize that there's so many more areas in the company and I want to develop my skills. So what kind of rotational opportunities? Maybe I'm in sales and now I want to move into marketing. Maybe I'm in marketing and is there an overseas opportunity because the world is so global?
Now, do companies, are they open to this type of scenario?
Yes, much more. I'll tell you, when I was in the company and I wanted to apply to a new job, they would say, no, you have to stay in your job forever. And I was like,
Right.
what are you, crazy? Now companies are developing almost like internal LinkedIn profiles and skills. And other companies are saying like they go out and they can look for the right skills and people to add to their teams. So it's really changing. Other companies tell me, they say to employees, stay in your job for 2 years, master it, have some good results, and then find a rotation or your next step. I have one woman told me, she's in the healthcare industry. She had a choice. She could be a functional expert, like just take the finance track, because some people just want to only do finance, or she could take what they called a project manager track. And in that role, what she could do is take on a project, and when it was done, find another one. They put the onus on her to find the project, and she would negotiate her own terms and salary. But she said she got to meet so many executives that way, so many people, and touch points around the company, and then you're always on looking for your next move. And she said it was incredible for energizing her and developing her skills.
Oh, I could imagine. So this is happening actually in other industries rather than just high-tech industries.
Absolutely. I was just actually in New York with a finance industry. They told all of their financial analysts that artificial intelligence is very important, programming is very important, and Python is the new language that everybody needs to know. And they said, I'll tell you what, we're going to bring it in. So if you want to become a data scientist, we'll do it for you. So we'll teach you how to program, we'll reskill you because you have the know-how, the subject matter expertise in the finance. What we need to do is help you build you into the future of finance. And a lot of companies are really thinking about how can I do that differently. So that it is really changing on so many levels. It's very, very exciting.
That's really encouraging to hear. I didn't realize that so many companies were so forward-looking.
Oh yeah, and so and I was in San Antonio. Well, one of the major industries in San Antonio is the automotive industry, and so Toyota did partner with a lot of the community colleges there to make sure that the curriculum and the technology, the robotics, whatever people needed to know, so that they could migrate quickly from the community college right into the automotive industry. So there's a lot of forward thinking out there, and that's what excites me more than the people still living in the past. It's much more different today.
Much different today.
So some of the skills that I also think are important, right, while you're taking your career selfie and what people need to think about is social intelligence. You know, as we mentioned earlier, we're in a very diverse workforce. And it's not only knowing how to lead, but you actually have to know how you are perceived. Because, you know, as we're trying to lead people forward, you know, we have to be very transparent and we have to have this another level of awareness. Another skill that I think people need to think about is novel and adaptive thinking. So I had seen on YouTube a surgeon, very interesting, who looked at how can I take 3D printing and, you know, maybe make livers or ears out of it because it would be so much better than what I'm currently doing today. So he's a plastic surgeon who replaces noses and ears, and it was like, well, I'm using foreign material in human body. But if I could take a 3D printer and put the liquid human collagen into the printer and print their ear, well, that would be so much more healthy than what we do today. So a lot of it is in your jobs is really looking at the technology and say, can I solve a problem better? I'm already solving a problem today, but now that this new technology has come into my life, can I use that in a different way? Talked to an eye surgeon who said, you know what, now I can use those robotic lasers, right, to really do eye surgery instead of me, right, using different kinds of medical instruments. So there's so many different ways that we can use technology to really change our lives, to change our work. And we have to think about that in the workforce, in our own personal career development. I also encourage people to continuous education. So it's not just about reading books anymore. It's going out, you know, what kind of feeds, what kind of blogs you know, listening to, or podcasts is very big now. What about webinars? Are you going to conferences or do you watch them virtually? There's so much information out there today that we can continue to train ourselves and develop our capabilities.
Well, thank you for being with us today again. Tracy, you've really opened up our minds to many, many different things to think about.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our thanks again to Dr. Tracy Weiland, who has given us a lot of interesting things to think about. And thank you for being with us today. And be sure to watch us on YouTube and Roku. See you next time. Bye-bye.